We're in a constitutional crisis with a battle between President Trump and Chief Justice Roberts over a judge named Chief Judge Boasberg. What's it all about? How did it start? How did we go from injunctions over the weekend to Roberts calling out Trump by name and Trump firing back? I cover it all on a new podcast we call Popac Live. And here's a clip. Let's talk about Chief Judge Boasberg and how we even got to that amazing historical bombshell of a communique between the Chief Justice and the President of the United States, a one-way communique that we've never seen before. All started because Donald Trump earlier this week, actually the end of last week, exercised his quote unquote war power to declare that there were enemy combatants among us, to use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to start deporting people to a black hole hell supermax prison in El Salvador. Is this the America that you and I all woke up in? Is this the America that we want? Sure, get criminals out. But there's a little thing called due process and the Constitution and civil rights. And if you can prove your case that they're members of narco-terrorist gangs and they are marauding the American countryside and they're raping and killing and murdering and drug dealing, by all means, prove it in court, get them out of here. But to shackle them and send them off to a dictator in El Salvador for them to go into the deepest, darkest hole possible and violate court orders along the way is not my America. So Judge Boasberg, in a fast-moving story, he issues a temporary restraining order. He issues a second temporary restraining order. And the Trump administration violates each one of them. And then they basically send an FU to the judge just before I got on the air, telling the judge, we're not even going to acknowledge that you told us anything during the hearing, because when you tell us things orally, we're not listening. We only look for your written minute order. That is BS. Every time you're in a hearing, we'll talk about it more from my legal practice. Every time you're in a hearing, you listen carefully. And if you missed it in your note taking, you go order a transcript, because whatever the judge said, that is the contours of the injunction or the ruling that you must abide by. They basically conceded that they flouted the rules of the judge. Open disobedience, the common theme here. But I'm not done. As I was coming on the air, Donald Trump fired again. And this is ironic, the two Democratic appointed members of the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. One was appointed when Donald Trump was first president and got rid of them both for no good reason. That violates the Constitution. It violates the statute that Congress used to create the FTC. It violates Supreme Court precedent going back to the 1920s in a case called Humphrey's Executor about what else? The Federal Trade Commission. So there is not only case law on the books that stops Donald Trump from firing people who are members of a bipartisan commission established by Congress, but the name of this very commission is in the name of the case, involves the case, the Federal Trade Commission. And they're upset. We'll talk about Rebecca Slaughter, who was fired and said, it is corrupt, it is illegal, it is unconstitutional, and they're trying to silence my voice to the American people. So we've got the FTC firings, which are going to end up, I'll just give a spoiler alert, exactly where the firings of the head of the chair of the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, Gwen Wilcox, she was reinstated by a federal judge. So are these two going to be reinstated by a federal judge. And we're moving towards another constitutional crisis. We are lurching, ladies and gentlemen, from one constitutional crisis and abuse of power to another, minute by minute with this administration. They are openly defying federal judges, except on a rare occasion where they think it doesn't matter. They will abide by federal judges' rules. What am I talking about? We have our first injunction against Donald Trump going after that other aspect of the justice system, lawyers. Donald Trump going after law firms by name. In an executive order, and Beryl Howell, the former chief judge of the the district court in DC, putting a stop to it. So we've got that. So we've got Judge Alsop to talk about in San Francisco, finding that Donald Trump is inching and his administration inching towards contempt. And then we've got, I haven't even touched on Judge Chang I've talked a little bit about it. Judge Chang on his preliminary injunction against Elon Musk and Donald Trump and the administration. So we got Chang, we got Alsop, we've got Beryl Howell, right? We've got Boasberg, we got Chief Justice Roberts. And the thematics today are Donald Trump's calculated attacks on the rule of law, on our conventions, on our traditions, open defiance of the federal courts, calling for their impeachment and removal in a way only a dictator would love. And where is it all coming from? It's coming from the fevered mind of those around Donald Trump, including Stephen Miller, the non-lawyer that ran a law firm called America First. We should have sued him. Who's now the deputy White House chief of staff. In the first incarnation of the Trump administration, he devised that little nasty special policy of separating families and putting children in cages. Joined by Kristi Noem, the puppy killer, who's the head of Homeland Security. And now these two got together and said, let's do the Alien Enemies Act from 1798. Yeah, let's not do that. That alone would have been big news. That alone would have been big news. So let's start this Popac Live off in the right way with the how we got to Chief Justice Roberts about 2 hours after Donald Trump posted his rantings of the morning, the rantings of a madman and a lunatic, where he went after the current chief judge, of the DC District Court, and said he's a lunatic, he's depraved, he's corrupt. Why? Because he issued a temporary restraining order to stop Donald Trump from using a phony war and phony war powers and to exercise his absolute Article 2 powers, which we only give in time of war under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, last given to President Adams, of all people. But you get it. You only get to use it if we're under attack or invasion or an imminent threat of invasion. Not because you want to turbocharge your deportation program. You can say a lot of things about the narco gangs and terrorists that Donald Trump just deported. Okay. But the fact that they're waging a current in real-time war against America, that they are the equivalent of a country or an enemy state, they've been here for, I hate to tell you, but they've been here for over 10 years. It's the slowest moving war or invasion I've ever seen. You'd have to use, a time-lapse photo to catch it, And so Donald Trump, though, wants to use it because his legal scholars told him it's okay. So on Friday, he signed it, a proclamation, not a declaration of war, which is necessary, only can come out of Congress, but a proclamation of designating these certain groups out of Venezuela, these narco-terrorist groups, as state actors, as enemies within, as enemy combatants that need to be removed immediately, exercising his rights under this 1798 law. And then takes the position, has the balls and the gall in civil disobedience or just disobedience to tell federal judges like Judge Boasberg, where after the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, filed their suit, to tell Boasberg, this is above your pay grade, son. My paraphrase. You don't get to know this knowledge. This is classified. This is the highest level of Article 2 commander-in-chief powers. Except he's not operating as the commander-in-chief. Except these 250 people were sent to the Arkan prison of El Salvador. Were not put on military planes. They were put on civilian planes. And so the judge, after hearing the initial lawsuit by the ACLU, when they heard Donald Trump had signed something on Friday, although it was published on Saturday, this proclamation, they ran into court representing the 6 or 7 Venezuelans who were going to be deported pursuant to this proclamation, and to have it reviewed by a federal judge to determine whether it's constitutional. Now, let me answer a question that's coming up a lot, because the echo chamber created by Donald Trump with his paid social media influencers, combined with his MAGA legislators, combined with people in his administration and his press secretary, and Elon Musk, this is the echo chamber that goes into overdrive to protect Donald Trump and to promote these false ideas. They have come up with this mantra: one single federal judge in one single federal district can't beat a president, like it's rock, paper, and scissors. let me disabuse them of that thought. Every major constitutional case that's ever come up the chain in our history, whether it's civil rights, women's rights, reproductive rights, constitutional rights, voting rights, you name it, desegregation, Brown versus the Board of Education, Roe versus Wade, even the Dobbs decision, all came up through a single judge making a ruling about presidential power, constitutional power, separation of powers, and the like. And then went like night follows day or day follows night to a 3-judge panel of a circuit court for appeal. Maybe it went to the full circuit court, what we call an en banc appeal. And then it went, if it went at all, to the United States Supreme Court. That is the road. Judges are empowered to fashion remedies if they find constitutional violations that match the violation. That's why we're seeing universal or nationwide injunctions, and it's driving MAGA crazy. It's driving MAGA crazy when it's used against the Trump administration. When they used it against the Biden administration, it was okay. When it came out of Texas or Louisiana, oh, they love nationwide injunctions, right? Now, this particular injunction or temporary restraining order by Boasberg wasn't even a nationwide injunction. He certified a class of everyone impacted negatively by the proclamation about the use of the Alien Enemies Act, and then entered a temporary restraining order in favor of the class, which is exactly, if you go back and look at research, exactly what the Heritage Foundation, Donald Trump's, wet nurse for all of his ideas, that's exactly what they promote. No nationwide injunctions. There should be class certification. Okay, we did class certification and an injunction. No, that's not good enough. It's really a universal injunction. You see the catch-22? You see how they chase their tail? They make us chase it with them. So Boasberg enters the temporary restraining order. Donald Trump tries to defy it. First, the Department of Justice files a letter request to the appellate court above Boasberg. Have him removed. He should be disqualified. The case should be reassigned. Rejected. They file a motion for emergency stay to stop all the proceedings in front of Boasberg. Rejected. Or not moved on, which is another way for the appellate court to say, the trial judge has got this. See, appellate courts like records to be developed below. They like facts to be developed below before it comes up on appeal and up to the Supreme Court. And Boasberg already set a fast briefing schedule. All this week, we're watching it. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. I sound like Godfather. Okay. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Briefings. And then on Friday, he's going to hold a hearing. He was going to do it by Zoom, but now he just announced he's going to have it be live. Public is welcome. We're going to try to get people in the room for that one, I assure you. So that's the substance of the TRO. Donald Trump filed a motion to vacate the TRO or dissolve it. The temporary restraining order, the ACLU will file their paper tomorrow. There'll be a hearing on Friday. Normal course. In the meantime, Donald Trump lost his mind. And the judge figured out he'd been had. Because when he held his hearing, when he held his hearing on Saturday night, this past Saturday night, yes, courts are open on Saturday in the Trump administration. It's like night court, except without bull, except for the bull coming out of Donald Trump. Sorry, folks. I digress. Saturday night hearing ends at about 6:30 or so. Now, I've been to plenty of federal hearings. I've been to them at night. I've been to them and gone at 10 o'clock at night on a Zoom or otherwise. And the judge, when you're there for an injunction hearing, you got to listen carefully because the judge is going to say a lot of things that constitute their order about the parameters and the contours of the injunction. And this judge did, including saying, if the planes have not yet left, turn the planes around. They're now enjoined as of right now. That was at about 6:30, 6:35 Eastern time. About an hour later, he put up a minute order, which is an entry about 2 lines long, 3 lines long on the docket, subject to a future writing, to make it clear that he had granted the injunction. And it's usually for the reasons set forth in the hearing. Yeah, but you are enjoined at the time the judge rules from the bench. There's no law that says oral statements or oral rulings by the judge don't have any weight or merit in injunction world. That's a lie. That's the position of the Trump administration. The Trump administration's position is, well, no planes left at 7:30 after the order hit the books, but we didn't really understand the oral injunction to be binding. So we let planes take off at 6:30. And they just filed a paper before I went on the air where they basically told the judge, after 7:30, Judge, we got it all cleaned up. We only deported people pursuant to something else other than the Alien Enemies Act. And the judge is like, I'm sure he's going to say, well, what happened to 6:30 to 7:30? What happened to the planes that you were moving to defy me? We already had Tom Homan go on Fox News the very same day to say he doesn't care what federal judges say. He only cares what the greatest president in his lifetime has to say about deporting criminals. So you've got a contempt problem and the judge fact-finding around it as the judge allows the briefing schedule on the merits of the temporary restraining order to continue. Not good enough for Donald Trump. Taking a page from Elon Musk, the guy he uses for all of his as a henchman, Donald Trump wakes up this morning and starts a lunatic rant. I mean, this sounds like a broken record about, it's the same thing. Here, let me give you the theme before I give you the rant. This is one single judge in one single district. He wasn't elected to anything. He's not the president of the United States. He doesn't have my mandate. He's crazy. He's a lunatic and he's a criminal. He's corrupt. All right. Those are that's the kitchen magnets. It's like kitchen poetry. He just moves those around, or whoever writes we know he doesn't write all social media posts. Whoever writes them uses that. That's the toolbox they use. So that's what came out. Judge Boasberg is a lunatic. He's corrupt. He needs to be impeached. He wasn't elected to anything. I have the power. I won the mandate. I won the counties. I won the 7 swing states. He didn't. Who's he? Who's he? He's the guy the person that represents the Article 3 power of the federal courts and the judiciary in their attempts to do the checks and balance required by our Constitution. That's who he is. It is the friction, as Justice Louis Brandeis back in the 1920s once said. It is that friction between the plates, between the moving plates of the 3 co-equal branches of government, the judiciary, the executive branch, and the legislative branch. It is that friction that is the check and balance. We don't want free spinning wheels of autocracy. Yeah. And so Donald Trump went too far, and you could tell they miscalculated. In Trump world, in Trumplandia, where they're just not that bright. You've got a series. Let's look at the lawyers around him. Then I'll tell you what happened next with Chief Justice Roberts. The lawyers around him are lawyers who got fired from their law firms, had to go solo to represent Donald Trump, won his criminal matters because he got reelected or got elected, and then got rewarded with top jobs in the Department of Justice that they don't deserve. Pam Bondi, former impeachment lawyer for Donald Trump. Top 2 other lawyers, Todd Blanche and Emil Bove, whatever his name is, criminal defense lawyers for Donald Trump. And Alina Habba is a White House counselor. And Stephen Miller is not a lawyer. So they all get together. This great law firm. This is the dream team. This is not. And they tell him he can do whatever he wants. Because of the way they misread or read, they get filter from the Heritage Foundation, I'm sure, and from Project 2025 architects, tell him what to do. And then he starts, but they miscalculated about John Roberts. Now, you may remember 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump, and I think he's going to rue the day that he did this. He couldn't help himself because he's a glad-hander. He's a celebrity showman. He's P.T. Barnum. He's Lyndon Johnson, but corrupt. And he starts to, give it like a fist bump or a little belly pat to Chief Justice Roberts at the joint session speech. Later see Roberts' face? It looked like he ate a bad oyster. And Amy Coney Barrett looked like she smelled a full diaper when he came into the room. And later that day, they issued a ruling against Donald Trump, forcing him and his administration to pay $2 billion on U.S. aid debt. So Roberts, after this lunatic rant comes out in the morning, 3 hours later, he issues a statement. You can count on almost no fingers how many times a Supreme Court justice, outside the course of a decision that they're making, stepped out of their hermetically sealed ivory tower to rebuke the leader of another branch. Like never. Like Roberts is so squeamish about all the political stuff that he refused to preside over the impeachment hearing of Donald Trump, even though the Constitution says he needs to, when he was impeached for Jan 6th because he was no longer president. This is a guy that he does not need or want this, although he created it with his immunity decision. And so Chief Justice Roberts came out with his rebuke of Donald Trump and told him out loud that for 2 centuries, if you don't like the rulings of a federal judge, then you appeal, but you don't ask and call for the impeachment of someone. Period. 2 lines. Boom. That's it. But what does it mean? What's the greater meaning of it? Did Donald Trump miscalculate? Has he pushed Roberts away from him and into a corner? What about the fact that he needs Roberts to support him on a number of policy decisions that are already in the pipeline, including this case involving Judge Boasberg? Right? And what will Roberts do? Disqualify himself and recuse himself? What happens if there's only 4-4 on the United States Supreme Court? Welcome back. I'm Michael Popac. You already know me from Legal AF every Tuesday on the Midas Touch Network at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Join me for a new podcast I call Popac Live. I am completely uncensored. Nobody tells me what to say. Nobody puts Popac in the corner. It's my curating, my topics, my time with you. It's sort of like a TED Talk meets a law school class meets Jimmy Kimmel, but with Popac on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So until my next reporting on all things Legal AF, I am Michael Popac. I'm Michael Popac, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOC-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.